Assalamu alaikum once again. Uh, this part will be based on chapter number one. This part of the recording, in fact, will be based on chapter number one. Chapter one is good communication works. And let's start with the initial content, and that is the business communication skills. The first part of this business communication skills based on the business. So let's define business first, because business is not the basic course of study during this semester for this course. So we'll not be focusing entirely on business with major factors. We'll be discussing just in brief what is business, how does it work, and why the communication is being required on compulsory basis for the business. So business is basically an entity that's engaged in commercial, industrial, or professional activities. Business can be profit-based entities, and it can be for not-for-profit organizations. Like there are different organizations which are working in Pakistan as well, like Citizens Foundation and Celani Welfare Trust, and these are basically non-profit organizations. Yet they are the organizations, and they operate to fulfill a charitable mission and for further social cause. All these things are basically based on different activities, and those activities classify into the category of the business, yet they are not for profit. Whereas the original business is based for a profit based activity. The term business also refers to the organizational efforts and the activities of the individuals to produce and sell goods and services for the profit making. Business range in business could be based on different types of ownership. It could be based on sole proprietorship, it could be based on partnership, and it could be based on organization. So whenever it's based on organization, the content is basically based on different parts of the business. There are different activities which the business usually follow as far as if it is a large scale business. There are different departments, and those departments, some of them are basically classified as accounts, audit, finance. If you're working for a manufacturing thing, then the factory part is also available there. Then comes the marketing, research and development, safety, and etc. If basically business could be further classified into different things, and those are basically uh, services industry and manufacturing industry. So what are the key factors that we need to focus? Business is basically defined as an organization or enterprise as far as third part of the ownership is concerned. There are basically three types of ownership within of the business. Number one is sole proprietorship. I'm repeating this content again. Number one is sole proprietorship again. Number two is partnership, and number three is organizations, and they're classified as corporations. And there are basically two different things in corporations. Number one is public limited. Number two is private limited. So let's define business again. Business is defined as an entity engaged in commercial, industrial, or professional activities. And those activities are basically meant for generating certain revenue. Revenue is basically currency return. It's not the profit. Revenue is basically the currency return of the different goods or services which are basically providing to the end users. And definitely there is a supply chain. You provide the content to the dealer provides it to the wholesaler, and the wholesaler provides it to the retailer, and ultimately there comes the end user who purchases the goods or the services. Services is a non-physical mode, whereas the manufacturing part is the physical mode. As far as manufacturing is concerned, there are different companies. Let me mention the name, like Toyota Corporation. It's basically manufacturing. The type of the category which this company is producing is usable goods. Whereas if we talk about Dawn bread, it's also manufacturing, but the type of the product this company is producing is consumable, and it's different. Whenever there are so we have an example of what we are having, like manufacturing, and there are two different things in manufacturing: consumable goods and usable goods. Then the other sector of this thing is based on services, and services industry don't have a physical unit that is presented to the end user. Like if you're utilizing mobile, then it is the cell phone that we are utilizing, the airtime that we'll be utilizing, you are going to pay for it, or the internet package that you're utilizing over your cell phone. it's going to cost you something, and all these things are non-physical by nature. Cell phone by itself is a physical in nature, but the services you are utilizing on monthly basis or package basis, they are basically non-physical in nature. Like the airtime, you're talking to someone over the cell phone, then it is non-physical. Like you are utilizing the internet package for anything, for browsing, for web browsing, for interacting, for having an interactive session over Zoom, or so on and so forth. Then it will be the services part of the company. So this company, whatever the company is, like Ufone or Zong or maybe Mobilink. So all these companies are basically based on, they are basically generating revenue based on non-physical goods. Revenue remains the same, whether the business is based on physical goods or non-physical goods. As far as physical goods are concerned, revenue is basically earned by providing the specific product, like Dawn bread. Whenever it's being provided to the end user, it generates revenue, but it's a small scale. And whenever you are providing end user with a car like Toyota Corolla, then you will be generating a high-end revenue. It's multi-million rupees in Pakistan by now. So these are the basic differences of the revenue, how it can be generated. There are different methods other than these as well. You can generate revenue by providing, let's suppose you have created a website for your company, like Toyota Motor Company, and you are providing the web space for certain, let's say, web-based advertisements. So it's also the part of the revenue. It will also become the part of the revenue for the company. Uh, let's move back. What is business? Business is an entity engaged in commercial, industrial, and professional activities. Business could be based for profit and not for profit. Not for profit organizations don't generate revenue. The primary focus is not to generate revenue. The primary focus is to provide certain facilities to the end users or the humanity, and they basically um, generate generate fund from different sources, like from charity. And business range from small operations operating in one industry to large operations operating in many industries around the world. Like if you're having a knowledge of Master, it's a Pakistan-based company. It was initiated multiple decades back, and it's based on, initially it was based on foam, uh, Master multi-foam. Then the company got diversified. Now it's producing heavy trucks for the mobilization of different heavy goods, and further the company is also further diversified. The company is also providing different tiles, so and so forth. So this is called diversification, and they can operate in multiple business types as well. The same company can have different businesses, or the same group may contain or basically have different companies under the umbrella. So Master, I think now my Master by itself is not a company; it's a group by now. So why the business? Why the communication is important in business? So let's talk back something regarding the different parts of the section or the sections of the business. Like we're having certain departments and different organizations, like there is accounting, there is audit, there is finance, there is budgeting, there is manufacturing, there's marketing. If the company is producing certain physical goods, then there will be manufacturing. Otherwise, there will be no manufacturing department. Then there will be marketing department. Then there comes research and development department, safety, etc. There are lots of things that needs to be discussed if you are talking about the communication within the business. So let's say if you are talking about manufacturing, how the company manufactures, how the company generates the revenue, how is it possible for the company to provide certain goods from this specific manufacturing unit to the end user? The entire supply chain works for that. At the initial phase, the COGS, cost of goods, the initial FG, not COGS, it's FG. FG stands for finished goods. The finished goods from the factory, they are being shifted towards the warehouse facility, and the warehouse facility provides the specific number of figures, the amount of the specific product that's available for sale, and that's being provided to the sales department. The marketing department goes for a campaign, and and from the result of that specific campaign, the sales department is responsible for providing the specific FG from the warehouse to the dealer, and ultimately the dealer is responsible for distributing it to the wholesalers, and the wholesalers are basically responsible for providing the content to the retailers, and ultimately there comes the end user. In certain businesses, the entire supply chain doesn't work. Like Toyota can sell its cars on its own, like Indus Motor Company is having different showrooms in a different part of the city and the country as well, and they can directly sell the uh, finished goods. In case of Indus Motor Company, the FG, the finished goods is Toyota Corolla, so they can sell directly. This thing is not applicable to every business. So whenever you're providing goods, you have to communicate when they will be manufactured, when they will be produced, when they will be shifted towards the warehouse facility, when the raw material needs to be uh, procured for the next batch of the manufacturing. All these things are very important as far as business is concerned. Otherwise, the business operations will shut down, and the business will not be able to operate. And whenever the business will not be able to operate, definitely it's not going to earn any revenue. And whenever there is no revenue, there will be no profit, because revenue minus expenses equals either profit or loss. So that's the basic reason the communication is very important for the businesses. So here comes the important part, the communication. That's the point of our focus for this session. And let's define the communication. Communication, written, spoken, or even non-verbal, is also used by leaders and managers for evaluating performance, directing instructions to staff, and motivating other people. So that's the basic. These are basically the stuff that's being followed up within the business. So they are basically the leaders, they are basically the managers, and they are basically directing, instructing, motivating, and ultimately providing the message to the persons within the business or the organization. People working as a part of the team or department with good communication as its leader are generally more confident and competent, because they understand what they are doing and what is required of them. They are able to work together in a purposeful, supportive, and flexible manner. Definitely, when the message is being conveyed to the staff in a proper manner, they have got specific skills, and whenever they are being instructed to utilize those skills in a specific manner, in a timely manner, definitely they are going to outperform others, which are definitely other persons. If they are not having the good communication skills, they are not be able to understand, they're not be able to communicate fast, and definitely the output will be on the lower side. Firms, business, or agencies that provide a product or service to others must interact and operate with other people. The interaction with clients, customers, staff, and members and other organizations require communication and will succeed if the communication is effective. Obviously, if you're able to convey your message, if your marketing campaign is not good enough, the marketing campaign is not attractive or catchy enough for the people to attract them towards your product or service that you're providing, then definitely they are not going to purchase, and definitely in return you'll not be able to have any revenue for that. So these are all the important things that need to be focused. So people have the means, different people have different means. I'm recording here. uh, Sorry for the interval. Uh, what I was discussing, communication. Yes, communication. Basically, whenever there are basically two different things, whenever they are available within a person, then the person is able to perform better. That the first thing is initial thing is the ability, and second thing is the willingness. Communication theory provides the specific means, the motivation, and the willingness, and the communication skills will provide the capacity. These are two initial things that will work with all these communication theory. In simpler words, whenever the person is having certain skill set and ability to utilize the work set, then the things will going to perform good. Otherwise, the things will not be able to function in a proper manner. So let's move towards the communication. Communication is supposed to be any behavior, verbal or non-verbal, that is perceived by another. What could be communicated? Knowledge, feelings, thoughts, information, knowledge base, news, anything that could be encoded and sent from at least one person and received for another person is classified as the communication. Uh, what are the different components that are available for the communication? Let's talk about the forms of the communication first. Uh, there are different channels through which the communication is being performed, but as far as the basic forms of the knowledge is concerned, they're basically based on three different parts. Uh, Verbal communication, that could be classified as spoken or written. Non-verbal, that's not based on different composition of words. And the third part is basically the graphic. There are other writers as well who add other things as well. So as far as other writers are concerned, they said multimedia. Multi means many, media means ways of communication. All the ways through which the communication can be performed should be included in the forms of the communication. And they classify as audio, video, text, and graphics. These are the four components that other writers classify. But as far as the basic communication concept is concerned, it's basically based on verbal and non-verbal. And the third component that's being added is graphical, because in the Greek terminology, the Greeks say that one specific picture presents 1,000 words, so it's more effective. So let's define the verbal communication. Verbal communication can take place in the form of spoken words between two or more people, written in words, and written communication. That's basically based on verbal communication. Verb means the basically composed of different language-based content. Non-verbal communication is sent by any means other than words or graphics. That could be your, say, certain gestures like a smiley face, and they definitely communicate, and that's the global language. There are different body movements, there are different postures, different dresses, and obviously all these things, they communicate certain message to the person to whom you're communicating. The third part is graphical communication. The graphic communication represents ideas, relationships, or connections visually with shapes, diagrams, and graphic communication can have both verbal and non-verbal components. For example, some of the non-smoking signs displayed in the public places. Definitely, you place a cigarette over there in the figure and place a cross over it, and it's presenting no smoking. So these are the form of the graphic communication. Now let's talk about the communication process. Uh, there are 7 different ingredients which are listed over here. I'll start with a different thing. They are not listed in the sequential manner. It would be easy if you don't need to have a rata sort of thing, then you have to follow the logical sequence. There is a specific context because of which the communication starts, and then there comes the sender, then there comes the message, then there comes the medium, and then there comes the receiver, and then there comes the feedback. These are some important things, and in between that is the noise factor that disrupts the communication process. So let me restart. I've taken another pause. What we are discussing, we're discussing communication process. The majority of the people communicate many times in a given day. This is especially apparent in the workplace. Whenever you are working in a workplace, this is apparently going to happen frequently. In order to effectively communicate with others, it's important to understand how the communication process works. Uh, the communication process by itself refers to a series of actions or steps taken in order to successfully communicate. It involves several components, such as the sender of the communication, the actual message being sent, the encoding of the message. This is not compulsory. Encoding and decoding part of the communication process, they are not compulsory. They can be removed from this specific process. If they could be, if they are being included, they are not compulsory. They're basically supposed to be optional part. And then there comes the receiver, and obviously after receiving, the content will be decoded, and obviously there could be certain feedback. So there are also various channels of the communication to consider within the communication process. Basically the channel basically refers the way how the message is being sent. This could be thought various mediums such as voice, audio, video, or writing email, or writing physical mail, fax, or Definitely, if you're not going to write anything, then you can convey through certain body languages, body language or certain facial expressions. So, and have them, these are basically different content which are basically understood in different ways in different cultures. You have to be careful as in case if you're having intercultural communication. The sender must choose the appropriate medium in order to communicate the process to have successful communication. Uh, let's get in brief. Let's define the communication. Communication is a bi-directional process in which the message in the form of ideas, thoughts, or feelings, it could be anything. It could be news, views, or anything. The message is transmitted between two or more persons in the intent of creating a shared understanding. That's a basic definition of the communication. The process of communication refers to the transmission or passage of information or message from the sender through a selected channel to the receiver, overcoming the barriers that affect the pace. The process of communication is cyclic as it begins with the sender and ends with the receiver. And there is a cycle, and that cycle is the feedback. That in this case, the receiver sends back the feedback to the sender. So that's why it's classified as a cyclic process. The process of communication, as such, must be a continuous and dynamic interaction, both affecting and being affected by many variables, that's internal and external as well. If a person is having a certain feeling regarding a specific environment, then the person may not be able to communicate effectively. So communication process consists of certain steps, and each step constitutes of essential part of the communication. uh, we have already discussed, in fact I have already mentioned the different content. If you don't have to uh, remember specifically, like what we say, rectification agar nahi karni, so then go with a sequence. The very first part is supposed to be the context. The second part is supposed to be the sender. Then there comes the message. Then there comes the channel of the communication, that's a medium. And whenever there's a medium, there could be noise. And ultimately, there could be receiver and there could be feedback. And there are two different things which could be added in this content. And this is encoding and decoding. These are optional parts. Encoding and decoding are basically the optional parts. Uh, Context, as far as this writer says, let me jump to the part seventh point. uh, this is I think we have jumped over the context. Context, as far as the Judith Dwa is concerned, she has written that context consists of situations, circumstances, or setting in which within which the communication takes place. Definitely, there's an environment that's been created for the communication process, and in the absence of all these factors, the communication may not be able to get effective. And there are basically certain initiatives which are being taken as a context for the communications. Context plays an important part in how messages encoded and decoded. uh, yes, it could be encoded and it could be decoded, but these are not the compulsory components. As far as logic is concerned, the thumbs up in Western culture, that's a sign of okay, everything went well, it's good, it's excellent. As far as our culture is concerned, thumbs up means tenga dikha raha hai. So you have to encode and decode all these expressions. So you have to be careful for the context. The same message can have a completely different meaning depending on the situation, since emotions and reactions to ideas and and events vary in different situations. So if you're working in a specific workplace environment with a temperature control environment having high lumens, high let's say high end business class furniture, and there are different people having business class dresses, and they are working in that environment, then you have to be careful. You cannot say something like that, chote do chai idhar le aana. So these things are definitely going to disrupt the message, and you have to be careful. You have to be extra careful whenever you are you're having these sort of things. So these are supposed to be the different content which are basically providing the context of the communication. So like there is a reason for starting any conversation, and that's basically the context or the background story for which the communication starts. So after the context, there is a sender. Uh, Sender is supposed to be an individual who is supposed to have grip over the communication language, by means of which the person collects the words, manipulates them, get it uh, get it translated to a form of sentences, different sentences, and converts the idea or the or the basic concept, whatever it is. It could be news, views, ideas, messages. Though they are being converted to the message, and the person then provides it further. So as far as the sender is concerned, the concept of the sender is supposed to be, as far as the human communication is concerned, it's supposed to be a person. As far as computer-based communication or any other sort of machine-based communication, it's supposed to be a device that initiates the process, that's responsible for getting the content, and also responsible for converting it to the suitable form to be presented to the medium that will take it away to the receiver. The very foundation of the communication process is laid by the person who transmits or sends the message. In human communication, the person is supposed to be the center of the message, which may have any thought, idea, picture, symbol, report, or any order of posture, gestures, or even momentarily smile that even communicates. So the sender is therefore the initiator of the message that needs to be transmitted after having generated the idea, information, or whatever it is, etc. The sender encodes it in such a manner that can be well understood by the receiver. Then comes the second part, and that part is the message itself. As far as the logical definition is concerned, the encoded form of words is classified as a message in human communication. And as far as the generic definition is concerned, uh, the transformation of idea, information, news, etc., whatever it is, and encoding in the form of words is supposed to be the message. Message is referred to as the information conveyed by the words in a speech and write-up, signs, pictures, or symbols, depending upon the situation and the nature and importance of the information desired to be sent. Message is the heart of the communication. It is a content that the sender wants to convey to the receiver. It can both be in the form of verbal or written, or it can be verbal, both written and spoken, or even non-verbal, that is in the form of pictures or symbols, etc. So the basic concept is encoding. So if it's based on machine communication, the machine collects, the machine encodes, the machine packs the different packets that will be sent to the receiver. Then there comes an optional process of encoding. Encoding is putting the target message into appropriate medium, which may be verbal or non-verbal depending upon the situation. uh, the next component is supposed to be the medium. Let us jump to the medium part, communication channel. What is communication channel? Communication channel is a means or technique used to signal or convey a message. For example, a conversation letter, telephone call, radio or television program. Information technology provides a fast channel of the communication that is becoming more widely available and easier to use than in the it depends upon the encoding. It depends upon the sender. If the environment is formal environment, and let's suppose the person is having a written memorandum, then definitely it will be distributed by physical means. In the previous ages, like a few decades back, even in America, the office memorandums are being printed, cyclo-styled, and being distributed to the employees on individual basis. Same is the case applicable with the departmental newsletters or the organizational newsletters. So channel is very important. In modern methodology, we are having electronic medium available for different types of the communication that's possible with different mediums. Like we are having electronic medium, which are having different applications. In short, we call it apps, mobile apps. They're also capable of providing messages. In short, like we are having in the current ages, we are having WhatsApp. It has the ability to convey in text or audio, video, text, and graphics, all of them, all of these sort of messages to they can be distributed to the individuals on a very, you can say, instant basis. So channel selection is very important. Like if you're having a normal human or personal communication, we utilize the normal environment that's being created by the Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. We are having our definitely sound system. It generates different vibrations in the environmental factors. Like the molecules are being disturbed with different wavelength and frequency, and they are being conveyed through the air. In this case, the medium is air. The air molecules are being disturbed with different frequency and wavelength. They are being conveyed to a specific distance. After a specific distance, the signal gets deteriorated, or the molecular vibrance or resonance keep on getting low. So the noise cannot be conveyed to a longer range. So if the person who is responsible, who is supposed to be the receiver of this communication, if the person is within the specific range, the person receives, and then comes the second part of the nature. That's the receiving system. The air drums, they feel the vibrations of the molecules, air molecules. They extract the specific frequency and wavelength from that specific disturbance. And then comes the process. Then starts the process of listening and interpreting and translating. Those wavelength and frequency are being translated into different words. Those words are basically composed into different sentences, and then starts the human inference engine that start extracting the meanings from that specific message. So it's a longer process, but it's how it works. That's the natural process. Whatever the channel is, whatever the communication channel is, whenever there is a channel, definitely there could be noise. What sort of noise could be? Let's say if you are talking within the class, then in the class sessions, physical class sessions, different students are having their seats, they are being seated, or different faculty members, they have been conducting classes. Let's suppose a specific session has been conducted over there, a specific person is taking class, and then there comes a situation when the class opposite to the current one, they got free. The specific lecture is being over, and the students gets on passing towards the stairs and towards the bottom section of the building. So whenever the situation comes, the disturbance that's being created in that environment because of the movement of different students and the voice that they generate, that these are basically the environmental factors. So these are the noise which affect the communication. So there are different examples as well, other than this as well. So let's define the noise. Noise, communication noise. Let's jump to the noise part first. Uh, Sender, message, receiver, communication channel, and context, interference or noise. So let's discuss noise. Communication noise refers to influences on effective communication. It influences the interpretation of conversations. While often logged over, communication noise can have a profound impact both on our perception of interactions with others and our analysis of our own communication proficiency. Forms of the communication noise include psychological, physical, uh, semantic noise as well, and apart from that, internal and external noise as well. Uh, if we talk about the signal, the machine-based communication, then whatever the messages, whatever the specific medium is, let's suppose we are using non-wire based or wireless communication, then the specific radio frequency that's being utilized for the communication process, then unwanted signal that's being intervened within the original signal, that would be noise for the machine-based communication and machine-based communication channel. Uh, Let me reiterate. The forms of the communication noise include semantic noise, environmental/physical noise, psychological, and Then the semantic noise. All these forms of noise influence the communicators and are vitally important to anyone's skills as a competent communicator. So let's define the first one, the semantic noise. Semantic noise occurs because of the ambiguities inherent in all languages and other sign system. The end of the communication might mean the process, the purpose of the communication, or the stopping of communication. The noise is often caused by the sender. Like if someone is telling you something, and during that, the person is also providing certain gestures that's showing uncomfort, or providing certain symbols or certain things that you're not comfortable with. So that's basically noise the person is being generating. So whenever the sender is generating a noise sort of thing, the this type of noise usually occurs when the receiver. Let me take up. Pani dena. So we were discussing the semantic noise. The semantic noise occurs because of the different ambiguities inherent in all languages. So usually, when a person who is the center of the message uses certain technical words, like if you're having a consultation with a doctor, and the doctor is continuously using certain words on a specific language that's intended for the biological substances, or let's suppose the different diseases that could be focused for the uh, what we can say, the name of certain diseases which are not commonly perceived by the general public, and they are being continuously mentioning those different names. So the receiver of the message, if the person doesn't have any prior knowledge of all these things, then this is the semantic noise. The person is not being able to decode or the what we can say, conceive the original message. So this is because of the semantics or the meanings. The literal meaning of semantics is maine, matlab. So when there is a use of technical language that you are not familiar with, like we are the information technology personnel, and we are at times we usually words like make it a loop, or try a different variation of the loop, try to use certain that doesn't breaks, or you can use the while loop, or that doesn't break with a specific count. So if you're using these words, these are basically the common programming terms which are not being understood by the individuals which do not have a prior knowledge of the information technology or the programming skills. So this is basically the semantic noise. Then comes the second one, that's the psychological noise. Like it results from preconceived notions we bring to the conversations, such as stereotypes or reputations, biases, and assumptions. When we come into conversation with ideas about what the other person is going to say and why, we can easily become blinded to the original message. Like what they are saying, we are not going to understand because we have got certain bias, or the person is having a different reputation. What the person is saying is not according to what his reputation is. So that's the psychological effect. Most of the time, the psychological noise is impossible to free ourselves. We are not being able to free ourselves from that, and we must simply strive to recognize that it exists, and take those distractions into account when we converse with other people. So we should focus within ourselves for the psychological noise. Then third one, in the current section, in the current session, I've already mentioned this. Like thumbs up in Europe is having good work, and thumbs up in Pakistan or in the Eastern culture, the Indo-Pak subcontinent, that simply means that or tenga dikha raha hai. So this is cultural noise. It occurs when the culture or subculture of the audience is different from that of the sender of the message. If the person is sending the message is, let's suppose he or she's from the Europe side, and you are interacting with him or her, and the person is saying, okay, thumbs up, everything went well, it's good, and you are understanding that, oh, tenga dikha raha hai isko, to matlab main batata hu usko. So the message is understood in a different way. The sender might not have anticipated. So this is basically the cultural noise, cultural part of the specific component of the noise. Then comes the environmental such physical noise. Acha, whatever I'm discussing in this session is not present in this book. Yani everything that I'm mentioning here is not present in the book. So you have to consult different books, because personally, when I was a student, I was consulting different books as per the advice of my faculty, as per the advice of those faculty members who were teaching me. So during that, all these things developed over a certain period of time. It's not like that everyone is having a specific knowledge and he's born intelligent, he's born knowledgeful. There's nothing as such. The more you work, the more you read, the more it's going to better for you for your next time to come. So the fourth component is the environmental noise or the physical noise. uh, this is the specific part of the noise, which I mentioned in the initial phase of the noise, like the class lecture that's been concluded, and our class is in progress, and the people starts going from around, and they're generating certain voice and noise, and that's discussing with each other, and that distracts the environment. That creates a different sound within the environment that's distractful for the current session that's being that's being carried out. So environmental and physical noise is the summary of the noise pollution from outside. That could be, let's say, different people, or because of different transport or industrial or recreational activities. It is any external or environmental stimulus that distracts the communicators from receiving the intended message sent by the communicator. And the examples of physical noise include overtaking the background, others talking in the background, background music, or like certain people who are having, like we are going through the road, and the bus driver is continuously honking. So these are sort of things that are basically classified as environmental or the physical noise. Then these are the four types of the noise within the general communication system. As far as machine-based communication system is concerned, it's totally different. It's basically external source and its internal source. External source, like if you're having what we can say, what could be the example? Like you are having your personal broadcast televisions in your home, cable televisions, cable TV, and the cable provider is having specific arrangements that's available with the K electric poles, and the person has intentionally put the wire just below the um, live wire of the electricity. Then the electromagnetic flux and induction, basically that will distort the actual signal coming within the cable TV. So you'll be having a less visible image over the television. So this is basically because of the external source and that's being inducted within the cable. What could be the internal source? The internal source could be like if the wire is being broken over a certain, let's suppose it's being distorted, like if you are having a LAN, computer-based local area network, and multiple cables, alternative channels are also available there. Let's suppose one of the 8 wires are being broken, so entire content will not be conveyed. So that's the internal source within the media. The things, the distraction is within the media. So what I have discussed in length about noise, and the reason is that we should focus on reducing the noise. The rest of the communication components are not that much important because they are usually very easy to understand. But as far as the noise is concerned, it's the most important and the most distracting factor in the communication process. So that's the reason I have discussed the noise at large. So noise is an inconvenient feature which affects the system performance. And because of the noise, there are certain factors which could be what we can say effect of this noise. So noise limits the operating range of the systems. Noise affects the sensitivity of the receivers as well. So these are certain of the factors we need to consider as far as noise is concerned. So let's jump to the receiver content. Let me reiterate the parts of this thing. Number one is context. Number two was sender. Number three was message. Number four is medium. And number five is noise. Context, the reason. Sender, the person or the machine that's responsible for creating and sending. Message is the encoded form of words in case of human communication, and encoded form of different data packets in form of communication in within machine by machines. And the medium is basically the channel or the specific arrangement of different content that's responsible for managing to receive the content from the sender and providing it to the receiver. That's basically the concept of the medium. And noise we have discussed at large, and there comes the receiver. So let's talk about the receiver. Uh, Here it is, receiver. The receiver in the human communication, it's the person who is responsible for collecting the message from the environment or whatever the medium is. In normal communication, we use the natural components like air drums, and the sound generation system. The receiver is responsible for extracting the content, the specific frequency and wavelength from the environment, air molecules. The air drum receive that, air drums receive that, and then the interpretation process begins. Listening, and then comes the interpretation process begins. It's being converted into words, then sentences, and then comes the inference engine. So receiver is responsible for collecting the content from the medium. If it's being encoded, it's being decoded in the form of, in case of machines, that's an optional part that's also available. And in case of humans, after hearing, the listening and the interpretation begins. So let's read a few lines from here. The receiver decodes or inputs the message to achieve understanding. In doing this, the receiver is also acting as an individual from a unique vantage point, interpreting the idea according to a particular personal perception of the message. This perception is the result of the receiver's unique background of experience, belief, concerns, and many other factors. So the thing that I haven't discussed yet, and that's written over here, is the receiver's background. Like if the person is being brought up in a specific environment, the culture and the norms that being followed over there, and the different beliefs, that's part of his upbringing. So they are definitely going to hamper the communication process if the communication is not according to the norms and the belief and the culture. So these are certain reasons, and these are also these are basically the factors of noise as well. So uh, receiver is the person in case of human communication, or machine in case of machine-based communication, that's responsible for extracting the content from the medium and interpreting and performing the content, whatever it is, as per the idea. And in return, the person may provide a feedback. Feedback in every environment, feedback is not applicable. Like if we are watching television, it's also communication from different, what we can say, different electronic devices that are responsible for providing the signals towards the specific television. But it's a single way, one-way communication. In this communication, you cannot provide a feedback. So if you're talking to someone over the cell phone, then it is a bidirectional sort of thing, and you can provide the feedback. If you are having an interactive class session, then you can have a feedback. Like if you're watching this video and you have came up to this point, then it is not possible to provide a feedback over this medium because it is one-way communication. You have to log in and you have to provide your feedback over Zoom or Microsoft Teams or any other medium for the interactive sessions. So there is a constant feeding of the information. Let's talk about feedback. Let's read a few lines from here. There's a constant feedback of information as people interact, as well as encouraging the speaker to continue. Listeners respond in a way that shows the comprehension, acceptance, or non-acceptance of the message. Feedback is an essential part of the successful interpersonal communication. That's very important. These two words, interpersonal communication, we are going to discuss at large in the coming few sessions. It is the receiver's response to the sentence messages that can be intentional or unintentional. Like if you're having if you're sitting in a dark room and certain and all of a sudden your dog or your cat or whatever your pet is that comes instantly, then your your reaction will be unintentional. You'll say, oh, what it is. So that's how it works. So that's also feedback, and that feedback provides the pat that don't don't come like that, like don't react, like don't do something like that when the light or the elements within the room are on the low side. So That's the feedback. Feedback is being utilized for during the communication. The feedback can be utilized like, okay, go on, carry on. It's also feedback, and that encourages the speaker to continue. So that's a good part of the feedback. And if you are not willing that the sender should continue sending messages, then you should respond something like facial expressions, bad facial expressions, or something like that. So these are basically negative feedback sort of thing. This will be discussed in the coming sessions. And let me reiterate, let me conclude. Uh, we'll not be discussing barriers in this part. Barriers will be discussed in the next session. Communication barriers. Let me conclude. Let me reiterate the context, the basic, because of which the communication is start. The sender, the person or the machine responsible for creating, managing, and putting the specific message over the medium, creating a message and putting the message over the medium. The third part is the message itself. Message in form of human communication, it is an encoded form of words. In case of machine communication, it is a encoded form of the encoded form of different content that's being collected from the machine that's being provided to the other machine over a specific medium or channel. Then comes the fourth component, that's the medium or the channel itself, the specific arrangement of the resources that's responsible for getting the message from the sender and conveying it to the receiver. So in human communication, the environment, the air molecules, they are basically responsible for the communication process. And this is the medium that's being generated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And further, there is noise within the medium. It's also discussed in detail. So after noise, there comes the receiver and there comes the feedback. So what we should do, what's the basic concept of this communication? How does it works? We already discussed how does it works, but we should have certain things that we should ensure for good communication or for the improvement in the communication process in the specific workplace or the specific formal environment. We call it formal environment as well. So the tips for improving the communication process, the very first thing is simplify your message. In order to ensure your message is properly understood, you should keep your language simple and to the point. The most important thing. Point number two, know your audience. It's very important to consider the audience that will receive your message, as well as their needs and their interests. If you are talking to a younger child, you should think what the younger child is having a perception about which you are talking. You should go to the level at which the child is. So knowing your audience is very important. Their knowledge base, the level of the skill set of the listening and hearing. You have to be very careful. So the point number two, the most important thing is know your audience. Point number three, be a good listener. If you want to be a good speaker, you have to be a good listener first. As a communicator, it's important to actively listen to what those around you are saying, so that you would be able to respond them in quick and proper manner. This will ensure that you are sending the right message to the right person. That's the correct audience. Point number four, ask questions. Clarify yourself. It's also important to ask questions to keep the communication flowing. Make sure your questions are insightful and engaging and encouraging to the audience you're focusing on. So do ask questions, do make the sessions interactive. That will help in creating a good environment for the communication. Then point number five, take the time to respond. Don't respond immediately. At times it's a requirement to respond immediately. Apart from that, you should take your time. You should think who your audience are. You should be a good listener. You should ask questions, and then comes you should respond in time. But 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 again, I'm telling again, but take your time before you respond. When communicating, it's important to consider how you might reply to a person. Ensure you know what they want to say. You have to you have to focus on listening, and then you have to take your time for the response. Point number six that you should consider for improving your communication process, consider your body language. If you're communicating through a different medium, it's important to be mindful of your body language. In addition, be aware of the body language of the person you're communicating with as well. So you have to be a good listener plus good viewer as well. If you're having a conversation in an environment, that person is in front of you, and or the person is having a video chat with you, and the person is not having a good facial expression, that simply means that the person is not enjoying the show. So you have to be careful. You have to consider body language. Yours, you have to control yours, and you have to observe the others' body language to whom you're conversing with. Point number 7, maintain eye contact. Again, it's very important. But again, there are certain things that we need to consider. In a multicultural environment, it's very difficult to consider all these things simultaneously, because in Western culture, eye contact is very important. If you're not having an eye contact with the person, that people say that you are not responding, you're disgracing the person, you're not attentive to the person. But if you're making an eye contact with certain people who are having a greater age than you, and you are interacting in the Eastern environment, the Indo-Pak subcontinent, you are having a Indo-Pak subcontinent culture environment, then it's difficult to have an eye contact, because if you keep on continuously having eye contact with the receiver, the people get irritated. Like if the women, there are certain women, they say, oh, yeah, he is staring at us. And if you're having a conversation with elders, they say, oye, aankhon mein aankhein dal ke baat kar raha hai. So it's difficult to maintain all these things simultaneously in different cultures. So as far as logic is concerned, the point number 7 is maintain eye contact. It's important to maintain eye contact. It's important to make eye contact with the person or group you are communicating with. This shows that you are actively listening to who you are communicating with. So that simply means that you have to be attentive, and you have to be focusing eye contact with the people to whom you're conversing. Clarify your message. The last point is clarify your message if needed. Everything is not present in this book, so you have to be careful. You have to listen to the lectures, and you have to extract the content from this. So clarify your message if needed. If the recipient of the message is unclear about what you are trying to say, it's important to clarify your message. This will help them to better understand you, and obviously the communication process will improve. So these are certain tips for improving the communication. They are for improving the communication process, and these tips are definitely useful and helpful. Extract these and do utilize them. And for the current session, that's um, that's all for the current session. Thank you very much for coming to this point of the lecture, and see you in the next section, inshallah. Till then, Allah Hafiz.